we have a brand new book, and it is a fun one, a delightful one. We're up to the book of Numbers, Sefer Bamidbar. It's Parshas Bamidbar. We are progressing really nicely and beautifully throughout the Torah. We're up to the fourth of 5 books of the Pentateuch, the book of Bamidbar, Parshas Bamidbar. It's a wonderful parsha. Every year I mention on the Parshas Bamidbar podcast that it's one of my favorite parshas. Of course, we don't assign a hierarchy to parts of the Torah. It's all from the Almighty. But there's something special about this parsha. You know, it talks about the census, and you read it for the first time, and it seems so boring. The different tribes, and the different numbers, and the Levites, and the flags, and the orientation of the tribes and the tribal groups, and the Levites, and they're flanking the camp of God. And then we count the Levites, and we count them from infancy, and then from the working age Levites, from the ages of 30 to 60. And then we count the firstborn, and we exchange the firstborn with the Levites. And then it delineates the specific responsibilities of the various Levite families in the transportation of the tabernacle and its vessels and how they are packaged. You read the parsha, it's long, and it seems very technical and very dry. But I always think that this is a parsha you have to be a bit mature to appreciate, to be able to pick up the lessons and the insights and to see the beauty and to see what wonderful, delightful, exciting, deep, and profound wisdom is included in it. But that's, of course, what we do here. We're in the Torch Center. This is the Parsha Podcast. And my name is Yaakov Wolbe, RabbiWolbe@gmail.com. Send your questions, your comments, and your feedback. So let us begin. Now, I will tell you, I prepared for you today 3 segments to go a bit deep and deeper into the Parsha. And the first segment, it's on the first comment of Rashi to this wonderful book. So the Parsha, and in fact, the book, begin with a census. God speaks to Moshe, Bamidbar Sinai, in the desert, the wilderness of Sinai, on the first day of the 2nd month of the 2nd year of the Exodus. So, to break that down, we're on year 2, month number 2. The first month is, of course, Nisan. That is the month of the Exodus. And now it's been a year and a half a month, because the Exodus was in the middle of the month, middle of Nisan. Now it's been a whole year and a half a month. It's the first of the 2nd month, namely the month of Iyar. So it's been a year and a half a month since the Exodus, and God tells Moshe, Se'u, lift, which means literally to lift, but it means count the heads of the entire nation, to their families, to the house of their father. Get a census. We want to know how many people are part of this nation. Now, at the Exodus, which is only a year prior, there was a census already. Now it's a year later, and there is a second census, and there will be a third census later on in the Torah. Every 20-year-old and up count according to their legions, meaning this is like for an army, right? You want to know how many soldiers you have in the army. 20 years and up, that's when Rashi tells us, that's when they are eligible for army service. That's when they're eligible to go to the military, and that's the age from which you count them. So we're told where this is happening, and we're told when this is happening, and then chapter 1 proceeds with the very detailed numbers of every tribe. Now Rashi, the first comment that he offers here, it's on the general notion of the people being counted. You know, they were counted already once before. It's only been a year. My goodness, how much has the population changed? But still, Rashi says, because the Almighty loves us and He cherishes us and we are beloved in His eyes, He counts us again and again. So during the Exodus, we were counted. And then with the sin of the golden calf, the nation was diminished and God wanted to know the number, how many remain. And now that it's been a year and the tabernacle has been built and it is in operation. And God is going to dwell amongst us, his divine presence, his Shekhinah is going to be amongst us. Now it's time to count them a third time. And then they'll be counted again a fourth time later on. And then Rashi ends with a quizzical statement. Be'echad ben-Nisan hukam ha-Mishkan. On the first day of Nisan, that's when the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was erected. Ube'echad be'ir, and on the first of the month of Ir, Mena'am, he counted them. So this is the first comment in Rashi. Now there's an obvious question on this Rashi, and all the commentaries address it. This census happened on the first day of the second month, the first day of the month of Iyar. And Rashi tells us that the reason why God's constantly counting the nation, it says as a sign of love. During the Exodus, after the sin of the golden calf, and when God wanted to dwell amongst them, i.e., when God wanted to bring his presence in the tabernacle amongst the nation, he counts them a third time. And Rashi says, on the first of the month of Nisan, the first month of the second year, that's when the tabernacle was erected, and then a month later they were counted. But wait a minute. Shouldn't they have been counted on the first day of the first month of the second year? When God initially began to dwell amongst them, when the tabernacle was initially erected, that was in the first of the month of Nisan. So why did God wait a month to the month of Iyar, to the second month, to count them? You know, Rashi's saying, God wanted to count them when he began to dwell amongst them. Okay, so count them when you're going to dwell amongst them, i.e. when you're going to inaugurate, when you're going to begin the tabernacle dwelling amongst the nation. Why is there a lag? Why is there a lapse? Why is there a month between the initial establishment of the tabernacle on the first of Nisan and the census, which happened on the first of Iyar? That's the question that all the commentaries asked on Rashi. And the Maharal says a beautiful answer, very powerful and useful and illuminating answer. He says that although it is true that on the first of Nisan, the Mishkan was inaugurated, but it doesn't really count until it's been up for a month. Yes, the Almighty began to dwell amongst the Jewish people. His presence was in the tabernacle on the first of Nisan. But until it's been a month, it doesn't quite count. And he even says, if you're a resident to a new city, you move to a new city, you travel, and you relocate. So you're a New Yorker, you're a Houstonian, you're someone from this new city that you are part of. And there are halachic ramifications of that. Of course, if you're part of the city, you're a member of the city, you got to pay for the municipal costs, what the taxes or whatever it is, the property taxes, whatever the collective responsibilities of the city, the members of the city are, you have to pay your fair share. At what point does someone become a member of their new hometown? So the Talmud tells us that they only become a resident for whatever halachic ramifications once they've lived there for a month. For the first month, it doesn't really count. They moved in, but they haven't quite got settled down. It hasn't been a month. If it hasn't been a month, you're still not quite someone who's a resident. So when God moves in, so to speak, to the tabernacle, he moves in on the first of the month of Nisan. But until he's dwelled there for a month, it's not really considered like God is dwelling there. And therefore, we have to wait until the first of Iyar. Now God's been here for a month, well, okay, now it's considered like God is dwelling amongst us, and now this is an opportunity for the nation to be counted. There's a deep insight here. If you think about it, the first of the month of Nisan, when God initially departed, so to speak, the heavens and moved in with us, he's dwelling with us. That's a momentous day. That's a earth-shattering moment. The Almighty God wants to be amongst us. And that should be a day that we should celebrate. We should mark. It should be a day that we should do all the trappings, all the ceremony, all the celebrations of this new development. But we wait a month. Because even though it's incredible that God moves in, the fact that God's there and he has moved in, and that's something which is new and fresh, it's not quite as impactful as when God's been there for a month and it's stable and it's consistent and it seems like it is something permanent. What do we celebrate? Do we celebrate the new things? Or do we celebrate the things that are consistent? The fact that God moves in, it's not a cause for celebration on the same degree as the fact that God's been here for a month. As great as something is initially, when it's permanent, when it's consistent, when it's ongoing, when it's a pattern, it's a different level. It's incomparable. And I think this is counterintuitive for us, because the things that make the news, that make the headlines, are the things that are novel, are things that are new, the departure from the way things were previously. And that's really what gets our attention. And here we're saying God arrives, and that's not quite the celebration as the month-old news. God's been here for a month. The Torah is showing us that the Torah has a different perspective about what is a greater accomplishment. There's a midrash we've mentioned in the past. The midrash has a fascinating discussion and debate as to which verse is the most powerful verse of the Torah that really encapsulates what the Torah is all about. And one opinion says, Shema Yisrael, the verse that is the declaration of our faith. Or perhaps, you should love your fellow as yourself. That's all of Torah in one verse. And ultimately the Midrash concludes that the verse that talks about the Karban Tamid, the daily Tamid offering, you do one offering in the morning, and you do one in the afternoon, and you do that every single day, rain or shine, festival, Shabbos, Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, doesn't matter, every single day you do it. That's the most powerful verse in the Torah, the most important verse in the Torah. The things that are new, that grab our attention, that create a flash, that's wonderful. That's not what the Torah celebrates. Things that are regular, that are consistent, that we see a pattern, we see some permanence, that is what is worthy of celebration. If someone does one thing, one incredible act, one incredible moment, one incredible display of greatness, in the eyes of the Torah, that's not viewed quite as highly as doing something maybe lesser, but doing it on a consistent and permanent basis. And I think the deeper point behind this is that when you do one thing, when there's this one big act, this big event, this big transformation, that's not quite as impactful as being something. So something happens once. It's a one-off event. It's a great event, but it's not a great person per se. I don't know if I'm explaining this well. You do something great, and that's wonderful, and that's this fireworks display of greatness. That's one thing. If you do something consistently for 30 days, that act is not what we're celebrating. We're celebrating the person, what you've become. When you do something for 30 days, that's something which gets down to your essence. That's who you are. That's your identity. I think, if we're going to try to change and upgrade and develop ourselves, and we have a goal, we wanted something great. If we wanted something with a lasting impact, we have to do it for 30 days. In the eyes of the Torah, that's when it registers. Otherwise, it's a flash in the pan, and the Torah is not going to celebrate it. It doesn't stick. It's a non-stick flash in the pan. When someone dies, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but all of y'all are going to die. Hate to say it. And when you get to heaven, you're going to face an accounting and a reckoning for your behavior. And the Talmud tells us that there are 6 different areas of investigation and interrogation that every person must undergo before the heavenly tribunal. And the second question is, Kavata itim la Torah. Did you designate time for Torah study? Doesn't say, did you study a lot? Did you study 15 hours a day once? Was there a time that was set aside? Was there some sort of permanent fixture in your life? A consistent thing, not just a one-time thing, a consistent thing where you said, I'm going to carve out time for God and His Torah. That's what matters, because that's when something becomes part of you, not just once, something which is consistent. If someone has this one great act, this isolated, discrete moment of greatness, of course, it's not negligible. We don't negate anything, but ultimately, the Torah is not going to celebrate it. Only when it sticks, and it's consistent, and it's ongoing, that is worthy of celebration. And I think idea number 2 is that 30 days, that's enough. When we think about trying to change our behavior, if you go on a diet, and it's so difficult, you're just waiting for it to end. There used to be a thing, before there was Ozempic, everyone just went on these diets where they just refused to eat as their stomach grumbles. So you may think, well, this is impossible. I'll never do it. 30 days, you're a changed person. That's the second part of it. Yes, we want to see changed people. We want to see consistency. Well, how long does that take? It's 30 days. We know that the Nazir, which we'll read about in next week's Parsha, the Nazir is someone who undertakes a 30-day vow to live a more elevated life. And 30 days, that's the minimum amount, or that's the assumed minimum amount of time. Why 30 days? Because when you have something that you do 30 days, you've changed as a person, not just isolated acts of being a Nazir, being more elevated, but it's filtered down. It's assimilated now into who you are. And even once you leave the state of being a Nazir, that change is part of you going forward. So I think this is a nice idea for us. Sometimes we get disenchanted. We want to do great things, and to do great things, it's hard. And maybe we'll muster up the energy and the courage to just do it once. No, that's a mistake. Find what we can do. Find some sort of consistency, some time that we can designate, and try to do that for 30 days. And once you do it for 30 days, that is worthy of celebration. Segment number 1. Let's get to segment number 2. People are being counted. And from the age of 20 and up, all those who are part of the army, they're counted. Moshe counts them, Aaron counts them, together with the heads of the tribe. And Rashi tells us in verse number 3, this teaches us that to be part of the military, you have to be 20 years old. No 18-year-old conscripts. No 19-year-old conscripts. No child soldiers. 20, that is the minimum age. And the question is why? You're eligible to join the U.S. Armed Forces at 18. In Israel, there's mandatory conscription at 18. Why does a Torah army require someone to be 20 years old? So there are a variety of answers offered in the commentaries. The most basic idea, the Ramban here says, that before you're 20, you don't quite have full physical maturity. Like the big leaguers, right? This very, very infrequently do you see a teenager in the big leagues. Why? Because you don't mature. Your body doesn't build out to its frame. And you don't have full physical maturation. You're still a teenager beforehand. And therefore, to go to war, you have to be physically robust, at least as robust as you'll get. So you got to be 20 years old. That's the basic answer that the Ramban says. A second answer, very creative. The Mishnah tells us in chapter 5 of Pirkei Avos, it lists all the milestones that a person should accomplish at a given age. So when you're 5, you start studying scripture. When you're 10, you start studying Mishnah, and 15, Talmud. At 18, that's the time to get married. That's pretty young today. Today people wait till later. But the Mishnah says at 18, that's the time to get married. Well, there are some halachic guidelines for what happens after you get married. For a year, the Torah requires a man, a newlywed man, to stay home and not to go to war. So if you are married at 18, well, the next year, year 19, you may not go to war. So when can someone be eligible for going to war? If you follow the rules of the Torah or the timeline of the Torah, you get married at 18. Then 19, well, you're home for a year, you don't go to war. And therefore you are ripe at year 20. A second idea. And here's a third idea. There's a topic that I don't remember talking about in the podcast that tells of Torah adulthood. When is someone an adult in the eyes of God? So of course we know there's a bar mitzvah. There's a bar mitzvah and a bat mitzvah. And the Talmud tells us a girl, she reaches maturity at the age of 12, and that's when she has a bat mitzvah. And a boy, boys are a little bit later in their development, so they reach maturity at the age of 13. And once they're at that age, well, they're an adult. They could join the minyan. They're responsible. The court can adjudicate their legal questions because they're an adult. So you reach adulthood at 12 and 13. However, the Talmud says that is only with respect to a human court. But there's another court. There's the heavenly court. We just spoke about this earlier, that when someone dies, they are going to face the heavenly court. And they're going to face these questions, but really every part of their life is going to be very thoroughly judged in the heavenly court. But the heavenly court does not judge minors. It only deals with adults. And they have a different cutoff. It's not 13 and 12. It's 20. If someone faces the heavenly tribunal and they have not yet arrived at 20, of course, that's a tragedy. Of course, that would mean that they're being judged in heaven before they reach 20. But even when someone's alive, there is a certain judgment that happens in heaven about them. And they're not punished, they're not held accountable for their behavior before the age of 20. Only at 20 is someone liable to be judged in the eyes of heaven. That's found in the Talmud. And that's a second, so to speak, timeline for the maturity of a person in the eyes of the Torah. And therefore, the Kli Yakar says that, what's a Jewish army about? Moshe is going to organize an army. We're going to go to war against, initially the Amalek and Sichon and Og, and eventually we're going to cross over the Jordan, and Joshua will lead the conquest against Canaan, the 7 nations, the 31 kings. There is this convention of a Jewish army. And you look at the war against Jericho. It's a very unusual conflict because, we blow the shofar, we surround the city, and the walls just get sunk into the ground, and there's 0 casualties. The ideal Jewish army. It's an army where the people are just the implements in the hands of God. And when God is desirous of us, well, we will win without any casualties. So really, what makes a good soldier is not their physical robustness, how good of a military man they are. What matters is their righteousness. You have a teenager, and they know that God's not going to judge them till they're 20. They could be a little reckless, a little wild. No, it's not encouraged, of course. But they could say, listen, I'm not held accountable in the eyes of Hashem until I'm 20. So if I'm a little bit less fastidious and meticulous about making sure that I'm conforming with the will of God, okay, not the end of the world. God won't judge me until I'm 20. And therefore, they won't have the requisite righteousness that's needed to be part of this nation. And therefore, younger than the age of 20, they are not eligible to join. Because again, the primary quality that we're looking for in a Jewish soldier is righteousness. And we're worried if you know that ultimately in the eyes of God, you are not being judged before the age of 20. There's a little bit of concern that you may be a bit lax in your righteousness, and thus you are disqualified from being a soldier. This is a fascinating idea. The age of 20, that's the minimum age, because that's when things matter, not just in the eyes of the human court, but also in the heavenly court. And I think the idea that I wanted to share about this, first of all, it's a fascinating insight. Just this notion that up to the age of 20, a person's not judged by the heavenly court. But specifically, I had a conversation with my friend Binyamin here in Houston, and he told me something unbelievable about this. If you are a parent for teenagers, there's a high likelihood that you're going to be dealing with some difficulty in parenting. Why? Because teenagers are nuts. They are cuckoo. They're a little crazy. And it could be a bit maddening for a parent. Because on one hand, they're physically mature, they're grown up, but they could be very impulsive, and they could have these weird mood swings, and they can, not live up to your expectations, and it could drive you nuts. You pull out your hair. It's comforting to know that the Almighty declared, I don't judge teenagers. I don't hold teenagers accountable. I understand, as creator of teenagers, that teenagers are nutso. They're crazy. That's okay. They're not ready. They're not mature. They are underdeveloped. This is not the final product, and therefore I cannot judge them. They're irrational, and that's all by design. There is a period of adolescence that's built into creation where God is saying, God's telling us, I'm not judging them. This is not what they will ultimately be, and therefore it's not fair to judge them. And I think this is a very powerful insight for us as parents of teenagers. Now, my teenagers are angels, of course, but I've heard rumors that maybe there is such a thing as teenagers who are a bit crazy. In Israel, there's a term for these crazy teenagers. They call them tipesh esrei, which means, it's a funny term. Tipesh means a fool. But you would say, 11, 12, 13, you would say the number, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 10, the way you count. It's like 13, which is 3 plus teen, right? So echad esrei, 11, which is 1, and then 10, 11. But they say just tipesh esrei, which means fool teen, basically. That's a term that you hear a lot in Israel. They're teenagers. They're not so. They're crazy. That's okay. Again, this is a rumor. For all my kids who are listening, it's not true with us. We're the exception, of course. Well, who am I kidding? The kids are not listening. That's fine. But this is a very powerful idea to remember. Parents of teenagers. Don't pull your hair out. They're growing. Their brains are undergoing a maturation process. They're not fully developed. Their brain, it's still a little mushy. And they have some elements of adulthood, but not all of them. And that creates that chaos. And the Almighty is aware of it. And our job is to love them and to understand what they're going through and not to judge them. If that's what God does, God refrains from judging them as teenagers. We ought to do the same. A very powerful insight. They are not judged until the age of 20, and they can't even join the army until the age of 20. They're not fully baked. And finally, to the third segment of this week's Parsha Podcast from the Torch Center in Houston, Texas, the Levites. Chapter 1. All the tribes are counted, and we're given very detailed numbers. But the Levites are not counted. God speaks to Moshe saying, this is verse 49, Mate Levi, the tribe of Levi. Lo sifko, don't count them. Don't uplift them. They're different. They're counted by themselves. They are in a class of their own. You have the whole nation, and then there's this one special select fraternity. Why? Why aren't the Levites included with the rest of the nation? So Rashi says something unbelievable. They are the legion of the king. And it's fitting that the legion of the king is counted separately. So we have two classes here. There's the Israelites, it's one class. And then there's the Levites, which is a second class. And there's probably a third one, the Kohanim, which is yet a higher class. The Levites are called the legion of the king. They are the legion of God. And they cannot be counted with everyone else. They must be counted separately. Now, if you think about it, it's a bit perplexing. The Levites were told they are the legion of gods. So what exactly is everyone else? Implied from this comment in Rashi, chapter 1, verse 49. The Levites, they are the legion of God. And the rest of the nation, what are we, chop liver? Are we non-Levites? We're not the legion of the king? Now, my in-laws, they're Levites. Are you telling me they're better than me? Really? No, again, I'm not worried about them listening either. But come on, between you and me, they're better than me, really? Well, Botnick, he's a Kohen. That's even a higher class. But what's a standard issue Israelite supposed to think when they read this comment in Rashi? The Levites, they're a class of their own. And they can't be counted with the common folk. They're a higher caste. But if they're the legion of God, them to the exclusion of everyone else, what does that make everyone else? Now, what does it mean to be the legion of the king? It means that these are the king's helpers. They're committed to him. They're part of his select group. But wait a minute, isn't that what the whole nation is? Isn't the whole nation committed to fulfilling the will of God? Now, if you think about it, there's a bit of a deeper point here. And we mentioned this in the rebroadcast podcast, and I think we mentioned it other times as well. The nation's being counted. why is the nation being counted? What's the purpose of this census? So the Ramban, my grandfather member used to speak about this Ramban a lot. The Ramban stresses that this is to uplift. The word, the verb used to describe counts, not to count. It's to uplift. Si'u, uplift. Elevate every individual. And the Ramban says that this was a moment where every individual had the opportunity to spend time with Moshe and with Aaron. And they would learn about them and learn about their family and uplift them and change them forever. The objective, the Ramban hints at it, but really my grandfather develops this idea from the Ramban. The objective of this counting, of this census, was to elevate every individual and to reveal to every individual what their unique role is. What role were they created to fulfill? What mission, what objective, what agenda of God is their responsibility? And every person was elevated. And typically, a census, it's an equalizer. It treats every citizen as just a number. And this is why censuses are dangerous. We don't do censuses. Because when you just count a nebulous mass of humanity, you're taking a Jew, an angel, and you're compressing and suppressing and lowering them to just a mere pawn. And that's not what happened over here. This is the uplifting and the elevation of every individual and showing every individual what greatness they have within them. So if that's the general census, where every individual is given their moment with Moshe, and Moshe tells them, Moshe peers into their soul and reveals to them what they need to accomplish, what their mission is, how they can be elevated. Isn't that the definition of being part of the Legion of God? Wouldn't this audience with Moshe and Aaron, where they are given guidance, tailored, bespoke guidance and direction for how they can fulfill their mission in life, isn't that the greatest testament that the whole nation is the Legion of God? Now, if you think about the whole Parsha, it's all about this. What is your mission? So chapter 1, we have, of course, the whole nation. They're counted as individuals. In chapter 2, the tribes are given, so to speak, their tribal arrangement and their flag. And that, and we mentioned this in the past many times, that is indicative of their tribal mission. So everyone's given their individual mission, chapter 1. Everyone's shown what their collective tribal responsibility is in chapter 2. Each tribe was given a flag that had a color that symbolized the color of that respective tribe on the breastplate. And emblazoned on the flag was a symbol that relates to the essence and to the mission, to the character and to the identity of that particular tribe. And of course, the Midrash goes through each tribe, what the color was and what the image was. And of course, there's symbolism to it. It's not just a nice color. It represents what you stand for. What is your mission? And our mission, of course, each one of us as individuals and as part of the collective, the tribe, we have what we need to do to serve God. Aren't we all the Legion of God, the Legion of the King? So what exactly is the difference between the Levites? They're the Legion of the King, and everyone else. Yes, we have our mission and we have our audience of Moshe, we have our flag and we have our symbol, we have our color. We have our qualities that we must direct towards the service of God, but we're not quite the Legion of the King. And the answer, I think, it's an idea that we've seen in the past, and I keep seeing it everywhere, is that there's a fundamental difference between the mission of the Levite and the mission of everyone else. If you're a serious person, and you understand that you're here in life, you're on a mission. And of course, you have the Torah that offers you guidance and direction. But you also have an individual mission, an individual responsibility, and individual destiny. A serious person works really hard to try to discover, try to identify, why do I exist? Why did God create me? What is my individual mission and responsibility in life? In antiquity, the way you find the answer is by going to the prophet. The prophet would reveal to every individual what the root of their soul is, where their soul comes from in Adam, and what exactly their mission in life is. And that's really what's happening in our Parsha. You go to Moshe. You as an individual. And you spend time with Moshe and with Aaron, and they're elevating you. You're not just a human, you're a human with an individualized mission. And that happens on a collective scale as well. Every tribe has to know more broadly, what's your flag? What do you stand for? The Levites, they have a different system. They don't try to identify their qualities. What's my soul? What are my predispositions? What are my talents? What are the unique attributes that I have, and how do I direct them in the service of God? That's not the way the Levites work. The Levites have a different system. The Levite system is Mi LaHashem Elai. Who is loyal to Hashem, to the Almighty? Come join. A Levite does not say, what tools do I have? And how can I extrapolate from my tools what my mission is? What are my instincts? What are my qualities? What are my skills? What are the things that I have a particular affinity for? That's my mission. I have to channel that towards the service of God. That's how everyone else works. The Legion of God is the group of people who are committed to God and will do whatever He needs, whether or not they have a particular affinity, predisposition towards that thing. When Moshe had to count the Levites, he had to count babies, right? From the age of 1 month and up. Moshe was concerned. If you want to count 20-year-olds, you make a call throughout the camp, all 20-year-olds come, and you count them. But if you have to count babies, infants, month-old children, you have to enter the tents and inspect the bassinets. And Moshe tells God, how can I do that? And what does God respond? This is our favorite Rashi. Of course, we have no favorites, but every year we mention this is the bumper sticker Rashi. We want to make this a bumper sticker. God tells Moshe, you do your job and let me do mine. Why are you worried about my job? Do your job and I'll do mine. So Moshe went to the tent of every Levite. And once he did as much as he could do, God did the rest. A prophetic voice announced to him how many babies were in every tent. Moshe didn't have to go and enter the tents and check the bassinets. This is a Levite. A Levite is someone who says, there's a job and it's impossible. I don't have the talents to do it. I don't have the ability to do it. I'm not gifted in that area. And God says, you do your job. Let me do mine. You're not gifted? Okay, well, do whatever you can and I'll pick up the rest. That's what it means to be part of the Legion of God. Do whatever you can. And if you can't do it, you can't finish it because you don't have the talents, the abilities, the skills that are necessary for this mission. Well, God will do the rest. An Israelite, a non-member of the Legion of God, tries to pinpoint their mission. What exactly are my qualities, and what's my soul, and what am I naturally gifted at? The Levite says, I am loyal to God, whatever He needs to do, regardless of whether or not I am predisposed to it, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't fit my talents, and my ability. I'm going to do it anyhow. Whatever he reveals that he wants, we are in. Just this week, I released a podcast on one of my other shows called This Jewish Life, which I'm sure all of y'all are long-time subscribers and listeners to. And I released an episode called 5 Fascinating Questions, which is 5 fascinating questions. And in one of the pieces on the podcast, I talked about the difference between Bezalel and Moshe. Bezalel was the builder of the tabernacle. And the verse tells us that he had all the skills to do it. He was gifted in a way that no one else was, with all sorts of wisdom, with insight, with knowledge, in every field, in every craft, in every domain, in every discipline, with the gold, with the silver, with the metals, with carving the stones. He was an artisan and a craftsman in every area, the wood and all the wools. And he was also a leader, a foreman. He was just talented to do all the work that he needed to do. And this, the Torah presents us in 2 places, chapter 31 and chapter 35 of Exodus. This shows his suitability for being the leader of this effort to construct the tabernacle and its vessels and its vestments. If you were to compare Bezalel's mission with his toolkit, they are a perfect match. By contrast, Moshe, God tells him, go save the Jewish people. Go lead the nation out of exile. Go negotiate with Pharaoh. Negotiate the release of the Jewish people. And Moshe says, well, I can't do it. I have a heavy tongue and I stutter and I'm speech impaired. And God says, just do it. Why are you asking questions? And one of the questions one of the 5 fascinating questions is, I don't understand. Bezalel, at the end of Exodus, he is presented as the ideal candidate for that job because look at his talents. He has all the right talents for that job. But Moshe, at the beginning of Exodus, when he raises the challenge, the objection, how can I do this job? I am not suited for this job. God dismisses that. And the answer is that there are 2 ways to discover your mission. There's the path of the Israelite, and there's Moshe. Moshe's a Levite. Bezalel, well, he's like everyone else. You go to the prophet, and you find out your qualities, you find out your abilities, you find out your skills, and find out what is the corresponding mission. Moshe's a Levite. You're part of the legion of God. You just say, whatever God needs to get done, I'll do it. But I can't. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You do your job. Let God do his job. The Jewish people, they have flags. They have an audience with Moshe. They have a prophetic revelation as to what they need to do in life. And the Midrash, in fact, tells us that the reason why the nation wanted flags is because when they saw the heavens, during the sign of revelation, the heavens were torn open. And they saw the angels, and all the angels had flags, and they coveted it. They desired it. Why did the nation covet flags? Isn't it nice to wave a flag? The flag symbolizes the mission. The angels. Every angel has a role, has a mission. Every angel knows exactly why they were created. And every angel is completely oriented and organized with the flag to know what exactly they need to do. And the people saw that. And like any serious thinking person, they wanted it for themselves. They wanted the mission. They wanted the guidance. They wanted the direction. They wanted to know how to live a life. What should I dedicate my time to? What should I focus on? What was I created for? What's my flag? What's my mission? What do I stand for? We have the same question as well. And the people are given the answers in our Parsha. On an individual level, Moshe reveals to them. On a tribal level, the Torah tells us they were organized with the flags. To us today, we have a problem because we don't have the flags and we don't have the audience with the prophet. And I will tell you, I will reveal for the first time here that please God, this question of how to identify your mission, your qualities, what your responsibility in life is, that's the subject, please God, of my upcoming book. Please God, we still have a lot of work to do to finish it. Today, we don't have the option of knowing conclusively, of knowing definitively what our mission is. But the Rambam tells us that every individual can join the tribe of Levi. Did you know this? The Levites, they're the legion of God. And you know what? Unless you're a Levite, you can't be a Levite. But a Levite is more than just a family. It's a orientation. And the orientation is, I am part of this people who say whatever God needs, I'll do, whether or not I am predisposed to it. And every person can, on that level, join the Levites. There is an option that's still open to us. Anyone and everyone can become a Levite for this matter. Who is loyal to God, come join. But I can't. Do your job. God will do his. If we adopt this attitude of the Levites, we too can join the legion of the King. I appreciate your attention. I apologize that we didn't quite live up to the mandate to be a little shorter and snappier, but what can we do? It's Parshas Bamidbar. It's Parshas Bamidbar. We love this Parsha so much. There's just no way we could hold back. But let me know what you think about this constructive feedback. I appreciate your attention and your listenership. Signing off from the Torch Center in Houston, Texas. This is Yaakov Walby. This is the Parsha Podcast. Have a wonderful day. A splendid rest of your week. A terrific, sensational, stupendous, uplifting Shabbos upcoming. And please God, with the unending help of the Almighty, we will talk again next week.